Hi and welcome. It's Jennifer Britton of Group Coaching Essentials and also Learning Lab and Design Studio. I want to welcome you for one of our first 2020 community calls. Several years ago, I did a blab on working with visuals, and since that time, it has been requested time and time again. So, blab was a precursor to Facebook Live. And as we know, here in 2020, we have so many options. We have Facebook, we have Zoom. Regardless, a lot of people have seen that blab. It's a 30-minute presentation I did called Working with Visual Cards, and I wanted to refresh it. A lot of people said, Jen, I've met you and you don't look like that anymore. And so you'll see a shot of it, but really, here we go. There I am back in 2015, sharing the Team Sparker deck. What I wanted to do today in this quick 20 to 30-minute call was really get you thinking about how can you use visuals in your programming. Back in 2014, I launched the Conversation Sparker deck. I have used it with dozens, if not hundreds, of group coaching clients. What's exciting though is beyond my reach, hundreds of you now have taken this out into your world of work. And so whether you are new to working with visual cards, whether you are experienced, I think there's always something new. And the nice thing is you can use one of many different visual cards that are available. In fact, if you go back to that original 2014, 2015 blab that I did working with visual cards, you'll see me talking about a lot of different ones. And today, in today's marketplace, there are even more. I'm going to be working with the Conversation Sparker cards that are my creation. That includes 72 cards, including some photographs, which you can see in the backdrop of that photo, as well as some question cards. We've translated this onwards now into French, and other languages are in the wings. And what I really love is that people enjoy this. I've used visual cards with all different types of industries, from legal services to healthcare, transportation, over into education. It became so popular that I also launched an ebook called The 40 Ways to Work with Visual Cards. So once again, you don't have to use the Conversation Sparker deck. You might be using the JIC deck. You might be using Points of View. You might be using lots of different other options that are out there. Transitions Journey deck. These are all great options. And my guess is you probably have one or more in your cupboard, in your desk, in your computer as well. Because one of the things we started offering about a year ago was a digital license to Conversation Sparker cards. And it's been really popular because people can now incorporate these into their own workshops, webinars, etc. So let's get started, because again, there's so many different ways to work with visual cards. As I go into in the 40 ways to work with visual cards, lots of different descriptions, and that ebook includes instructions on how to work with it. There are Conversation Sparker questions, as well as some tips on how to do it virtually. Today we're going to toggle back and forth. I want to give you the virtual sense, as well as how you might use it on a board, on a table, etc. So how do you want to work with visual cards? Well, I've done a screen grab here of 24 of the 40 ways to work with visuals. So from working on setting intentions, to working around alignment, to metaphors, to creating a story, to helping people do strategic planning, visual cards really create a new doorway into the conversation. Again, you might take one card. So for example, here's one called What's possible if you collaborate. Often if I'm doing work with a team, I might get the team itself to pick a card just randomly, and we'll see how that sparks. We'll see how that actually creates some connection and meaning for the team involved. If I'm working with a group, I might have each pair in a breakout physically grab a different question, and I'm always amazed at how resonant many, not always, but many times the questions are. In fact, just before the holidays, late last year, I was doing a session with HR professionals, and around the room, I went around and gave the option for each pair to pick a question. Always at the end of my session, I ask, so what connection did that have to you? And it's always amazing. I really think, sometimes there isn't a connection there, but many times there is, and it creates a whole new layer of learning. So you don't just have to use one card, you might have multiple cards on the go. And let's look at some of the different ways, right? We might be using with visual cards on working around vision. Certainly as we're stepping into a new year, very popular topic. I often will incorporate visual cards also on topics around values or strengths, even in planning, right? You could have people select different cards, and you'll see some of the earlier work that we've been doing this year around intention setting and planning. I purposely called these a conversation sparker deck because it really, I have found visuals create just that spark to new insights and awareness. And in my work as a coach, as a virtual facilitator, it's all about having a better conversation, creating some new meaning and some new insights. So here are some different ways. And again, I'd like you to think about what are the conversations that are raring to be had in the groups, the teams, or even with the individuals that you're working with. Let's take a look. And as I shared a few minutes ago, I've been doing a lot of different types of visuals in the last couple of weeks with the groups that I've been running with. And again, this is some of the 2020, early 2020 theme work that I've been doing. We're going to work in a minute with Conversation Sparker, but I want to share two other resources. The one on your left is Rory Story Cubes. I'll just step out for a minute. You can pick up a copy of this at any bookstore, Amazon, etc. This is not a paid, commercial venue for this, but I have used Rory Story Cubes quite a bit with teams, with groups, with individuals. They really, really love it. And earlier this month, as we stepped into the new decade, a lot of the groups that I was working with, it was about setting intentions. What are your intentions for the new year? We may often ask the question, what are your goals? But to some people, that's just so big. And so using something like Rory Story Cubes, or what you see beside it, the icon cards that I've developed for the remote pathways work that I do now, it really creates a new doorway into the conversation. So some of my themes this year have further been reinforced. Some of them, if you know me and my work, my writing and effective group coaching, it's all about the conversation. It really is also sometimes as a coach, I'm going in and I'm shadowing teams. I'm actually in the background, really working with them. Some of the other iconography that's come up, many of you know that I do an exercise in Group Coaching Essentials called the Sweet Spot. I've written about that in Effective Group Coaching and From One to Many. To me, it's also about the target. So in fact, a lot of these cards, have meaning. And if you're interested in seeing how this can be facilitated, I would direct you over to the remotepathways.com website. Earlier this month, my co-host and I, Michelle Mullins, we spent some time in our first of many community calls for the years working around these themes. So if you scroll in at remotepathways.com and you click connect over with us at the Conversation Sparker Zone of Remote Pathways, you can actually see how we did this 5-minute exercise, the one in the middle with the focus, with the hand, the support, with the high five, etc. It really creates some amazing energy. And I would really invite you to think about how can you get a little bit more creative, not only with perhaps photographs, but also icons. So I thought we could work with a couple. And I'm actually going to come out of this so that you can see a similar, working with it, similar to what I did a few years ago in that earlier blab. And I thought it might be interesting. Talked a lot about planning, but like a precursor to planning is working with vision. And this is a big area that I've always found that people have a lot of traction around. So just outside of here, I'm going to close this share so that you're going to actually see behind me just a board. Imagine that this is a whiteboard and you're working with a group. You might do this on a table. You might actually lay them out. You could also have them on a board or a white space, whatever you have in your office. And what you always want to do is make sure that you have about 3 to 4 cards per person. Okay, so 3 to 4 cards per person. I've just grabbed 4 cards right now, and I'm just going to randomly put them up here on my board. I'd like you to think about your vision for your work this year, or maybe this decade. What is important to you? And what is the image that is important as you think about where you want to go? I want you to zoom in for a minute. Maybe it's the window. Maybe you are looking at and peeking through the different panes of opportunity. Maybe it's about pulling pieces together. This is an old car and it's in parts held together by duct tape. But you know what? There might be a perspective of what's the duct tape that's gonna like, what can you duct tape together? One of my themes this year is known as, I call it the 3 R's. It's reduce, reuse, recycle. That's what we would say in the environmental realm. But for me, it's repurpose, republish, resyndicate. And so in fact, this call in some ways is a republishing, just to take it deeper. I know that this is an area people are interested in, so let's have another slice on it. Perhaps, however, you have a very different mantra. It's not about repurposing or republishing. It's about creating from afresh. Maybe you want to grab your pastel of variety of colors and see what emerges. Or maybe it's about stopping and actually going back to school, doing some learning, and adding to your toolkit. Notice how each of these 4 photographs has a different intention, a different meaning, a different resonance. So if I was working with a group and we opted to just select 4 cards, I would simply put those on the table or put them on the board. We would then have a minute to actually, in silence, write out what's important. So I think I'm going to do that. As you think about your vision for your work this year, let's take a minute right now for you to pause and select one and think about how that could add some new insights, new awareness into what you're creating. We'll start right now. All right, that's about a minute. And again, just notice what came forward for you. You could be more prescriptive in offering a couple of questions that are prompters, or you could leave it as open as I have. Now, maybe you're working with a team, and what we know about teams is that they are very diverse in their vantage points. So again, a couple of different iterations. What I love about visual cards are there's many different ways to work with them. It's not just a one size fits all. So instead of selecting 4 cards, we might actually put all our cards on the table and get every group member, every team member to select a different photo. And then together, they can come up to the whiteboard, to the white space we're working on, and actually place it down. That might create a whole new storyline for that team. So again, one product provides lots of different options. And what I think is important, right? It's just visual cards are another metaphor. Metaphors are the doorway into a whole new series of layers of learning. Just as we know with photographs, with metaphors, it's not just one thing. Pictures capture 1,000 words. And so as coaches, there are so many different ways that we can be working with this, that we can be helping people explore this. When I've done work with vision and visual cards with teams, often I do get people to select different cards and a team creates its own storyline. Or we might even start the morning by going around the table, virtually or in person, where everyone shares their cards. A great coaching question to ask the team is, what do you notice about the themes that have emerged here? If you're getting everyone on the team to pick a different card, ask them, what are you noticing about the themes that you have created or selected? So options there for you. I hope this was interesting. I'm going to go back to our shared screen and take us back into the virtual space. But I do want you thinking about different ways that you might use visuals as a tool. Now you can create your own. I always like to recommend the work of Marcy Nelson Garrison. She works with coaches on product development and including card decks. And so if you've always wanted to, maybe this is your year to create your own deck. The beauty of that is that it is your IP, your intellectual property, and you are retaining your copyright. You do want to be very careful with whatever visuals you're bringing into your own program. And that was one of the reasons why I originally designed my own deck. So a couple of other ways to work with visual cards I wanted to offer you, sort of a half a dozen. Maybe you're working with a group or a team around connections. So similar to what I just said, you might even ask people to select a card and share what do they bring? What is the thing that they bring to our group process? I'm just going to randomly see what I have here. I've got actually the question cards right in front of me. So over here off to the side, I've got something else. I've got one here, and maybe I am going to pick this of yellow lilies and say, you know what I'm bringing today is some sunshine and some optimism. Maybe that's really important. It certainly would be if you're in the middle of winter and outside is a lot of gray. So maybe there is need for a bit of zest, a bit of like sunshine, a bit of renewal. You could also, if we go back to our icon graphs, you might even use the icons. Okay, so this is another new deck that I am going to be offering very shortly, and it is the Remote Pathways icon deck. And I have used it in a lot of programs virtually by getting people to circle and select the icon that represents what they're bringing. Nice thing about icons is you can have a lot more on your deck. And if you've seen me speak, it's very easy for people to actually visually and virtually select their icons. So you could also use a one card for reflection, and maybe it's a question like, what are your roots? Or what do you need to say no to, right? A very key card at the beginning part of this year is, what do you need to say no to? We're saying a lot to a lot of stuff, but is there anything you need to say no to? You could also, if you have your own deck or a digital license, i.e. Conversation Sparker cards, you could also put up a selection of photographs. And these all come from the Conversation Sparker deck. I may be working with a group virtually and say, select a card which represents. So select a card which represents, you know, who you are as a business owner. Select a card which represents what you're creating. We might wrap up a session by also having some of those images up, and I might say, okay, grab a card or select the card that indicates you're learning from today or your top idea or who you are. So there's lots of different options. And again, this is what I like doing in these calls, is just providing you with some thinking space. Visuals create that pause and, as I said, create that spark. So what might you do? Now, a couple of other things to think about is, what's our story? And so again, for a team, they could have their icons. They could each select a card, or as you've seen, they might go a little bit smaller. So one of the decks I launched late last year is the journaling Conversation Sparker cards. What I like about these is they're even smaller. And what I found over the last 5-6 years of having several decks, so we have the Conversation Sparker deck, we have the Journaling Sparker deck. Notice the difference in size. And what I didn't bring to today's call are the Teams 365 Team Leadership cards, which are geared for team leaders. What I found since launching these, the Journaling Conversation Sparker cards, is people really like these. There's 52 cards, so one a week. And if you're working with an individual, or if an individual just wants to purchase it, you can have a different journaling sparker every week. So maybe the question to be inquiring on this week is, what's important right now? Nice thing about these is they're really small and portable. They're a great, I would say, budget-friendly resource for people, clients that you might be working with. And again, they're available over at conversationsparker.com. That's the website where you'll find a lot more resources related to what we're touching on, including some worksheets, including actually a downloadable workbook and a brochure on 6 different ways that you can be working with visual cards. Definitely try it out, you know, and again, I think there's lots of different iterations. It doesn't physically have to be things. This is an image I've been using. It's from Adobe Stock. So I have an Adobe Stock commercial license, and that means I get 10 new images every month. I've been doing a lot of conversation this month already around business startup. It's a new year, it's a new decade. At the Coaching Biz Growth Lab on Friday, I shared this and said, what could your business startup look like this year? which of the icons has most important resonance for you. So we're going to take another 30 seconds here. I'll invite you right now, just zoom into your screen. Think about what is important for you in your work this year. Is it the rocket ship? Is it adding more brain capacity? Is it thinking about the cogs on the wheel or using your megaphone? Is it being number one, a thought leader in your industry? Is it about coming up with new ideas or maybe getting the target really in focus? Or is it putting puzzle pieces together? Take a minute and for yourself, think about what business in 2020 is going to look like for you. All right, so that's about 45 seconds. And again, there's no right answer here, but just notice what you've enjoyed out of today's call. Is it actually physically working with things, seeing it on the board? Is it seeing it on the screen? For you, is it about reflecting on it? Is it about articulating about it verbally? Is it about reflecting and articulating? And so we look at all these different strategies in my ICF CCE approved programs, both group coaching essentials and also now there's virtual facilitation essentials. So maybe you're more intrigued at this moment in time in looking at how do you do this virtually. We go into lots of different approaches. So roadmap for this year, final visual. I want to give you 20 seconds and you can continue this. What's your roadmap around maybe not on-demand programming, but around programming going to entail this year? Again, I can ask you that question, but wouldn't it be fun to actually draw it out? This is an image I've been using in a lot of my different programming. Again, you can see that freepik.com got it, but I got it through Adobe Stock. So what is your roadmap? Are you getting people to really think about the stops along the way? What are those road pits or pit stops? Are they going into the mountains? Are they going into the jungles? What are they doing? So I'd invite you as you log off of today's call to take a moment and think about your roadmap. I'm going to pause for one last moment just to give you a moment to capture some of your thinking. How might you be incorporating visuals during 2020 or whatever year you are looking at this during? So we spend a lot of time exploring these topics also at the Learning Lab and Design Studio. You might have seen that little icon up top. That is an annual group I host throughout the year. We meet every other Friday throughout the year. Perhaps you'll join us for a quarter or the rest of 2020. It really is a rich place where you can accelerate and amplify your learning approaches for the groups, teams, and individuals you work with. Thank you so much. Again, as an author, as a coach, I feel very privileged to meet with so many of you throughout the year, whether it's a virtual conversation that we have, whether it's a live presentation, whether I'm showing up and talking on your podcast. You can find all of my books from Effective Group Coaching, which celebrates 10 years this year. Then, of course, I went on to write From One to Many, Best Practices for Team and Group Coaching. That book has been embraced by so many coach training schools all over the world. My 2017 Effective Virtual Conversations is something we're really dipping into today. And that book, too, has found its way into many, many different hands of people who are moving their work remote and virtual. My last two books, Plan, Do, Track, and also the Coaching Business Builder, are workbook planners. And so if you're interested in learning more about those, check out the YouTube channel. And that is, of course, Effective Group Coach, or under my name, Jennifer J. Britton. it was really interesting to sort of do a recap or a rehash of that earlier blab that I hosted years ago. I hope that you found some value, and let us know. Connect with us at Facebook, Effective Group Coaching, or leave your comment here on YouTube as well. What did you enjoy? What might you try? How can you share this with others who can add techniques like this to their work with groups and teams? Have a great day. I will be back next month with another topic, and you can connect with us online at groupcoachingessentials.ca. Take care.